What if a home seller who is already under contract with a buyer decides to sell the property to somebody else? So in this case, a buyer enters into a contract to buy a property listed in the MLS. The listing agent calls the buyer's agent to let them know that the seller has decided the property to sell the property to someone else. So can the seller get away with this? What should the buyer do? So first of all, if the seller actually just goes ahead and sells the property to buyer number 2, if the transaction is completed, there's nothing that buyer number 1 can do to undo that. What they can do is go after the seller for breach of contract. That could recover their due diligence fee, their earnest money, and any other fees related to the purchase, loan costs, inspection fees, that sort of thing. Now, if buyer number 1 really wants the property, what they could do is hire an attorney to file suit against the seller for specific performance, and also file a notice of, it's called lease pendens, which means pending suit. Once the lease pendens is filed for specific performance, it will be bound on buyer number 2 if they go through with the transaction. So what that means, if a court ultimately decides that the buyer number 1 is entitled to specific performance, then buyer number 1 will get title to the house, and buyer number 2 will then be able to go after the seller for breach of contract. Now, practically speaking, the filing of the notice of lease pendens would make it difficult for the seller and the buyer number 2 to complete a transaction, because the existence of the lease pending notice would be a cloud on the title that would make it difficult, if not impossible, to complete that transaction. So, hope this has been helpful. Thanks.